This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba for another technical diving tips, techniques, and trips video. A lot of sea life that is rarely seen during the day can be readily observed at night. So in order to see sea life like this free-swimming green moray eel, you may have to do a night dive. Because the night environment can be significantly different than that during the day, we encourage divers to seek appropriate training and to acquire needed equipment. One category of equipment which you might not already have and which you will definitely need are lights. Lights for scuba diving come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and that's what we're going to discuss in this video. Light selection is not only critical for use during the actual night dive, but also for after the dive in case you need to be located while you're on the surface. Most experienced night divers, as well as most certification agencies, suggest a minimum of 2 lights to safely conduct a night dive. One of the 2 lights should be a primary light. Primary lights are characterized by having longer battery lives and higher lumen output than secondary lights. During the dive, the primary light will normally be in your hand. Primary lights can have either a narrow beam or a wide beam. Narrow beam lights are generally used for general purpose use, while wide beam lights are generally used for videography or photography. Some lights have the ability to project both a narrow beam and a wide beam. The big blue light illustrated in this image actually can do both. Dual-use lights, like the one illustrated here, can actually be rather expensive. However, to enjoy a night dive, you do not necessarily need an expensive light. This is a relatively inexpensive underwater light, which uses disposable sea batteries, but has a 1,000 lumen rating and is rated to 330 feet. Even though this light uses standard C-cell batteries, it is possible to obtain rechargeable batteries to power this light. Secondary lights are generally smaller and less expensive than primary lights. However, today, many secondary lights are just as bright as primary lights. However, due to the smaller size, most secondary lights have shorter battery lives. A specific feature to look for in a secondary light is different power levels. Since the secondary light is generally used as a backup, it is not necessary to have the light on at full power. By having the light on its lowest level, the battery life can be significantly lengthened. Secondary lights are generally not carried in the hand, but are clipped or looped through a D-ring on the diver's BCD or plate and wing. Another category of light the diver might be interested in using is a tank light. These are generally used to indicate the position of a diver relative to other divers. There are many different types of tank marking lights. We would discourage the type commonly known as a glow stick, which is generally disposable. There are some types of tank lights that do look like disposable marker lights, but actually have replaceable batteries. However, we prefer the particular type of light illustrated here. This type of light has the ability to be secured statically on the diver's gear using the small clip on the back of the light. Tank marker lights using the glow stick format may come loose and be obscured by the diver's gear. The fourth type of light that divers may consider is a headlamp. Here, we are not talking about the use of a headlamp for underwater use. Use of a headlamp in that manner has a high potential of blinding other divers, which we generally discourage. Our recommended use of the headlamp is for the preparation of the diver's gear before the dive and the disassembly of the diver's gear after the dive. It's also possible to use a secondary light for this purpose if you hold it in your mouth, but after a while this becomes uncomfortable. So let's briefly discuss now a few of the general concepts that we suggest for conducting a night dive safely. As we just mentioned, it's a good idea to have a headlight to help you properly prepare your gear for the dive. When you're ready to get into the water, prior to actually entering the water, you need to turn both lights on. The purpose of this is just in case you do lose one of your lights on the entry, it will be much easier to find. Another important consideration for night dives is the use of light signals. Since you will most likely not be able to see the diver's hands during a night dive, it will be necessary to use the light to communicate hand signals. A circle is used to indicate OK. Back and forth rapidly indicates something is wrong. And a slow back and forth is used to get another diver's attention. One thing that most divers do not realize is that light signals do not necessarily have to be directed at the diver. If, for example, you are looking at a piece of coral and you see a light pass rapidly back and forth on the coral, somebody could be signaling you. Most divers interpret that sort of situation as random reflections. Another seemingly obvious but frequently ignored issue is avoiding shining your light directly in someone's eyes. This applies obviously not only to other divers but also to sea life. If your light is very intense, you can frequently cover the lens with your fingers to reduce the light output. A related topic is the tendency of some photographers and videographers not to turn off their light when they are not recording. With some configurations, if the camera rig or video rig hangs down vertically, the light can actually shine directly in the eyes of the person behind them. Lights are not only essential for diving in the night, but they can also be very useful for diving during the day. Many dive sites have an abundance of coral with cracks and areas in there that you would not otherwise be able to see if you did not have a light. Lastly, in the unfortunate event that you are separated from your group on the surface, lights can be very useful for signaling your dive boat. Many higher-end lights have a mode which signals SOS automatically. You may also have a DSMB in which you can insert a light. This will make the DSMB very visible at night. So those are just a few considerations for your first or next night dive. This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba. I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.